To You're Not Broken, the real reason women struggle with desire, boundaries, and relationship satisfaction. My name is Erin Brandt. I'm a sexologist and Her Time Therapy's sexual empowerment coach. I have a postgraduate diploma in forensic sexology. I used to manage the comprehensive sex ed for Planned Parenthood in rural Southwest Colorado and northern New Mexico. And then I eventually launched my own business, Birds and Bees, to provide positive sex ed to parents, individuals, and youth. I'm still running that business while currently in my second year of a master's in clinical mental health, which has brought me to Her Time Therapy. I believe that we are all sexual beings, including our asexual folks. I believe sex feels good and that it is healthy. I believe that sex requires consent, that consent is communication, and communication is easier with knowledge. I know that this is not the reality for most people, and my work is to help enhance communication and pleasure for others. I have been immersed in the positive sexuality education space for 20 years and am honored, really, truly honored to be here with both of you. To let you know, I've been recording some mini sexual empowerment workshops as supplements to these kind of larger workshops. And I wanted to share a link to our YouTube channel so that you can go check those out, maybe when you're done here. So drop that in there. Okay. And we're just going to keep trucking along, and hopefully some more folks will continue to join. So this is a shame-free workshop about relationships, emotional labor, boundaries, and women's desire. Bear with me while I read aloud this slide, as this information is important and I don't want to miss anything. So all participants are asked to agree to the following guidelines. We ask that what is shared by participants in the space remains in this space. Just a note, the group discussion at the end will not be part of the recording. No participation will be forced. You decide whether or not you want to participate in any activity or discussion. All feelings are welcome and valid. And we ask that all participants respect others' differences, their beliefs, their cultures, their sexual identities, and all other forms of intersecting identities that comprise who we are as unique individuals and as members of various groups. Thank you. All right, some logistics out of the way. So in this workshop, we're focusing on several areas of learning and growth, and we're kind of just getting started. The goal here is to start with this workshop and then launch into some bigger series. And I'll talk more about that at the end. I will be dropping links and resources in the chat throughout the presentation. There's no rush to open them during the workshop. I wanted to provide them as a reference for anyone who just kind of wants to get their hands on them now. If you are participating in the live workshop, you will receive a follow-up email afterwards with these resources. So if you miss one in the chat, check your email afterwards. Okay. So the struggle in relationships, particularly for women, isn't because they want too much or they aren't trying hard enough. What we're seeing is that they struggle because they've been taught to prioritize their partners over their own boundaries and desires. And I'm going to use partners as kind of a broad term for anyone you're dating, maybe you're seeing, right, or you're in a long-term relationship with. Our purpose here is to learn about the socialization that leads to giving, adapting, and performing in relationships, and how those patterns quietly erode desire, satisfaction, and emotional safety over time. This workshop is not about fixing yourself. It's about understanding what you were never taught, and most importantly, saying the really key stuff out loud, even just saying some of it out loud. So that's what we're going to do today. All right. Relationships are the #1 source of emotional labor and invisible work for women, and often leave them feeling like they are broken or the problem. This erodes emotional safety in relationships and can internalize feelings of failure. And these directly impact libido, desire, and sexual relationships. So we're going to explore this a little bit further. We're going to break these down. So what is emotional labor? This is bandied about. It's all over the blogs. It's all over the internet. Let's take some time to understand it. Emotional labor is mental work done by an individual to create and hold the emotions that exist in relationships. If you have kids, they can be a really good example here. This means holding space in your mind for their emotions, being tuned into their bodies and communication to register changes, taking time to ask questions, listen, open yourself to receiving their emotions, even if they don't make sense to you or they feel hard to receive. Kids are a great example because they often don't have the skills, communication skills, to tell us what's going on. And so we're spending a lot of our emotional labor trying to read them and figure it out. This, however, does apply to any human-to-human connection. Extended family, neighbors, friends, parents, spouses, acquaintances, work colleagues. It's constant. So I wanted to ask, and folks, you can raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand feature, or you can just shoot up one of the emojis, like a thumbs up. That's also one way to do it. Raising your hand just means that I'm going to call on you. So maybe a thumbs up from the emoji board is a little bit better. But thumbs up if you try to learn the name of the barista at your coffee shop, or you remember the names of your colleagues' children, like you're keeping this stuff. Yeah, Michelle, yes. Or you keep track of an acquaintance's life details, right? Like you're tracking your neighbor and what's happening in their life, because occasionally you'll see them and you kind of want to be able to have that conversation. These are all examples of emotional labor. The more intimate the relationship, the more emotional labor is occurring. So I did some digging and I found an interesting blog post that I'm going to drop in the chat really quick. And remember, these are coming to you in an email. So if you don't catch them in the chat, that's okay. But there was a blog by Dr. Allison Martigano where she was answering the question, are women really naturally more empathic than men? And I found her review of studies into this really clarifying. I'm not going to go into detail here. I just know that this is a great resource and wanted to share it with all of you. All right. So invisible work is the next piece we're going to talk about. And I want to share a story from Susan Hyatt. She's a life coach and an author. She also made a documentary. So I'm going to read her story out loud to you. While filming the Bear documentary in LA, literally right in the middle of filming, trying to rehearse my script, get in the zone, and stay 100% focused, my phone kept ringing. Unknown number. After the third try, I figured it might be important, and I answered it. It was DoorDash, a food delivery service. I'm standing outside your door with food, he said. I instantly regretted answering. Long story short, there was a mix-up with the delivery address. My son Ryan had used DoorDash to deliver to his apartment. Then when my husband Scott went to order his dinner later that same day, he didn't notice that the address was not our home. So here stands the poor delivery guy at the wrong door. I took the time to explain what happened, gave him the correct address, and went back to the shoot. He called again. I'm at your home address now, and no one is answering the door. Ah! I said, you know what? Put the Mexican dinner on the doorstep and walk away. And then I called Scott. No answer. Later, when I spoke to my darling, beloved husband, he said, I didn't even hear the doorbell ring. That's when my videographer leaned over to me and whispered, the invisible workload of women. It's wild, am I right? You can be in the midst of producing a documentary film, or 5 minutes away from stepping on stage to meet Oprah, or deliver a keynote speech, or prepping to address the US Senate. And then you're pulled away to deal with 2 grown-ass men who can't figure out how to successfully order takeout food. Unreal. I really appreciate Susan's story because I feel it. I feel it in my body, right? I have a reaction to it. I've been in that situation. Yeah, right? That like frustration. So Susan's story is a clear example of invisible work and decision making for the comfort and ease of others. So Alison Damiger is a professor and author of What's on Her Mind, The Mental Workload of Family Life. And I encourage you to Google her. I'll drop her also in the email. She outlines the 4-step process that allows decisions to be made effectively. The first one is anticipating needs. So, for example, maybe I'm using the restroom at home and I happen to notice that there's only a little bit of toilet paper left. Not enough to like run out right away, but maybe the next person after me might run out and then they're stuck on the toilet. Or I come in later and there's nothing there at all. So I'm anticipating the needs of not only myself, but people who come after me, right? Next, I need to identify options for filling those needs. So I need to make sure that there's toilet paper in the house. I need to find it and put it back in the bathroom, like restock the bathroom. And maybe I'm going to delegate this, right? I have a 12-year-old. They have chores. I can ask my 12-year-old to do this. So the next step then is making decisions. And so I'm going to ask my 12-year-old to go ahead and refill the toilet paper. And maybe I'm going to have them do that in all the bathrooms just to cover all the bases. But the final step is monitoring progress, right? Because I'm asking a 12-year-old who may or may not have heard me, listened to me, may have said, yes, I got this, and then doesn't follow through. So then I have to follow up. Who here nags? I nag all the time. The nagging. Oh, the nagging. So imagine if you carry this process by yourself, day in, day out, for the people in your life. This is exhausting. It's exhausting. And we feel that overwhelm, right? We feel the constant pressure of trying to get all of it done. All right, so this leads us into emotional safety. In some relationships, intentionally or unintentionally, there is another layer on top of emotional labor and invisible work. When you worry about being judged, yelled at, or belittled, you begin to feel emotionally unsafe. Our view of emotional safety can be skewed by previously abusive relationships, including growing up in a home where abuse occurred. Abuse, remember, can be emotional, verbal, physical, financial. There's many types, right? So after leaving an abusive relationship, what may feel safe is actually a subtler form of unhealthy behaviors, such as passive-aggressive communication or the silent treatment. Emotional labor and invisible work without acknowledgement, apology, or taking on more of the load. And not being listened to or opinions being dismissed. Often, the wearing down of emotional safety isn't a big event. It can be a slow eroding of your sense of self. So we've reached a point in the workshop where I'm going to actually ask you to do something besides just listening to me. On your piece of paper or your note-taking tool or something that you have handy, I want you to take a minute to write down 3 to 5. If you can do 5, that's great. If you can do 3, that's great. If you can only do 1, that's okay too. So 3 to 5 ways you identify. Who are you? Right? Try and answer that question. So I'm going to give you about a minute. And we'll be able to talk about these in the open discussion, but I just want you to start working on them right now. So 3 to 5 ways that you identify. Who are you? Oh, let's see. All right. So hopefully some of you've gotten some things down. All right. Um, so using the thumbs up or the thumbs down emoji, right? We've got the little emojis at the bottom of the screen. I want you to answer the question, was this easy for you to do? So if this was easy, give me a thumbs up. Okay. If this was hard to do, can you do the thumbs down for me? Okay. Yeah. We're going to talk more about this. Not tonight, but we are going to talk more about it. And I don't want to leave you totally hanging, only because this is such a bigger, broader conversation. And part of our future workshops is about digging more into this. So what I'm going to drop in the chat right now is a link to a values activity. And I find that doing some core values work helps us maybe rediscover who we are, kind of reconnecting a little bit. And like I said, we're going to be doing some of this work in our future workshops, spending a little bit more time in this space. But I appreciate everybody taking time tonight to try. So let's keep moving forward. Let's talk about internalized failures. So all these factors, emotional labor, invisible work, emotional safety, these set people up to blame themselves for why a relationship isn't working or why it has ended. So is it any wonder that people feel emotionally and sexually disconnected from people that they're partnered with? They feel frustrated trying to name and advocate for wants and needs. They feel exhausted from carrying others' metaphorical and literal baggage. And they feel guilty for asking for anything much, right? Even specifically getting into those things about honesty and pleasure and safety, right? It's too much to ask for, and they feel bad asking for it. So these are all stories of failure that are internalized, right? Where we find ourselves blaming just us. We're the only ones. We're the reason why the relationship doesn't work. We have to try harder. We have to do more. And I would say we don't. So we're going to keep moving. We're going to talk more about this. So relational exhaustion is not a personal flaw. It's a systemic pattern. We are trying to exist in an oppressed society through patriarchal values, right, as well as cultural expectations. And these are patterns that tell people how women should behave in relationships. The list on the screen, I want you to read in your head with your best sarcastic voice, okay? I do want to note this is not unique to heteronormative relationships, but it tends to be a little bit more prevalent. For example, don't ask too much of your partner. Do everything to keep your partner happy, including keep the house, perform sex that pleasures your partner, contribute financially, raise the kids, and in your spare time, build a rocket ship to take you all to the moon with perfect skin, body, hair, and a delicious dinner on the table. Make sure you don't upset your partner or anyone else for that matter. Once you are in a relationship, your self-identity disappears and you are no longer important. Sex is your duty. Consent is irrelevant in relationships. Your partner's pleasure is more important. Giving women an orgasm is too hard, so why try? It is unacceptable for women's bodies and minds to change. I want to pause here on this last item to take a moment and acknowledge that we had quite a few people sign up for the workshop, which is great. And I asked some questions about who's struggling. And out of all the people that signed up, 67% of them noted that body image is something you struggle with in regards to sex and intimacy. It was the highest issue Noted. The next highest struggle was sexual shame at 38%. The unreachable and harmful body expectations in our society have caused this. They are unattainable, and yet that doesn't stop media, people we date, family members, current or past spouses, from commenting on our bodies. Loving and desiring ourselves is the lowest item on our to-do list. We push it aside, we bury it underneath that emotional labor and invisible work because it feels like a massive mountain we have to climb all by ourselves. And we are climbing enough of those giant mountains every single day. I want you to know that you're not alone. And tonight you've started the work. You're here. You're at a workshop. We're talking about this stuff. And this is a baby step, but it is a step. So I'm going to have you take a moment. You don't have to write anything down. You can just think about it. As you read through the list on the slide, or as you kind of listen to me talk about some of these pieces, I was being sarcastic, but in the sense that we know that these exist. These are these patterns in our society that exist. So when you think about them with compassion and without judgment, ask yourself which of these patterns you're participating in. Do you find yourself trying to be as low maintenance as possible? Are you doing people pleasing? Women love to people please. That's on high on our list of things to do, right? So we're going to take a closer look at 4 distinct patterns that show up in relationships, and we're going to kind of drill down a little bit on this. All right, so choosing one of these labels isn't meant to stick you in one place, and it definitely doesn't define your entire situation. These are examples. You may find that you identify across all of the patterns, 2 of the patterns, none of them. That's okay. Each pattern shows how women can set aside themselves in a relationship in order to maintain emotional and physical safety, even financial security. None of these patterns, right, state that you are bad or broken. Instead, they are revealing how you have adapted to a flawed system. And I am going to get you a link. Da, 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 da. Yes, for the patterns. Hang on. There it is. So if you want to follow along, they're here. Because I didn't write down all the details on the slides. But again, those will be showing up in your inbox. All right, so let's start with the giver. Givers feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. They ignore their own needs, prioritizing their partner over themselves. They also equate being needed with being valued or loved, right? Not right or wrong. This is adaptation to a flawed system. Next, we have the performer. So performers shape their behavior and personality based on what will be praised or approved. They feel pressure to be good, attractive, competent, or impressive at all times. They connect self-worth to external validation rather than their own internal experience. Next, we have the peacekeeper. So peacekeepers avoid conflict by agreeing, placating, or staying silent even when something feels or is wrong. They soften or suppress emotions to prevent tension or disappointment in others. I used to do this a lot. They also experience anxiety at the possibility of upsetting someone or being seen as difficult. And then finally, we have the self-silencer. Self-silencers withhold needs, boundaries, or preferences to avoid rejection or burdening others. They internalize discomfort, telling themselves, it's not a big deal, I should be able to handle this. And they struggle to identify or articulate wants due to long-term suppression. Understanding how we participate in a pattern of behavior is information. It's data. that we can use to reconnect with who we actually are. So as we do the work to move away from sociocultural expectations and patterns of behavior, we are also working to reconnect with our bodies. There's a lot of research exploring the physiological impacts of stress on our bodies. We know that when our body is stressed, desire for sex and pleasure is one of the first systems to go offline. Same goes when we feel frustrated, disappointed, or angry in our relationships. Desire fades when we stop feeling like full participants in our lives. And loss of desire isn't a moral failing. You're not broken. Your body has adapted, and it's turning off systems to protect you. So what we're wanting to do in some of this work is get that data, and then we want to start to reconnect. And a lot of that is awareness. So as you're sitting here right now, how are you feeling emotionally? For some of you, this might be really hard. For some of you, this might be the first time you've been in a space like this, talking about some of these things. Others might be like, yes, I feel validated, I feel seen, I feel heard. Yeah. That next piece is to take that emotional sense and figure out where it is in your body. Right? Are you clenching your jaw? Or your shoulders all crunched up? Right? Or maybe you're feeling like a weight is lifted. Or maybe you're feeling a little icky in the tummy, like things they're sitting heavy, where there's pressure on your chest. Taking time for ourselves to feel the emotion and then to figure out where it is in our body is part of reconnecting. And it's really important that we start this work. Reconnection also looks like setting boundaries. And this is a big step. And I encourage you to explore boundary setting in therapy. We will continue to do boundary work in our future sessions, in our future workshops. And I'm also going to drop an activity, like a little worksheet in the chat. I know that will be in the email, but boundary setting is a big one. I mean, when we think back to some of these patterns, those behaviors and some of that ingrained pieces, it's so far from boundary setting. It's so far from saying the word no that it can take a lot of processing and a lot of work to get to that place of being able to set some boundaries. So I say that here with kindness and compassion, and I want you to feel patience and that same compassion for yourself in that work. So reconnection looks like being true to yourself. Authenticity is rediscovering who you are and what you value. And we touched on that a little bit earlier. Go ahead and do that core values activity. It's really fascinating to look at yourself and see that through that lens. And then reconnection looks like being patient and compassionate with yourself. You adapted to systemic patterns. You are not solely to blame. You have not failed. This isn't something you fix alone or in one workshop. We have covered a lot of ground in not a lot of time. And for many of you, this may be the first time you've been in a space like this. So please be kind to yourself. Your emotions may be unclear, they may be complicated, they might be heightened, or all of the above. Take time to reflect on what you've experienced in this workshop. Bring your reflections to your individual therapy for support and processing. And finally, your curiosity is powerful. Keep asking questions, lean into learning, and explore spaces like this workshop. All right, so before we move into our group discussion, I'm going to share a couple of resources directly from this. I offer one-on-one coaching. It is focused time on your personalized experience with disconnection. So it's you and me in blocks of time. So I offer 30, 60, or 90-minute blocks. You can pay per session or you can purchase a package, and packages just help reduce some of the cost, which is great. Let me drop a link. If this is something you're interested in, you can sign up for a free consultation and we can see if this is a good fit. So that's one resource so that you're not having to do this work alone. Next is the series of workshops, which I've been alluding to. Really, their whole purpose is to expand on this workshop, take these pieces that we've been talking about and spend more time on them. The first workshop is scheduled on March 11th, and this is to explore dating, but I would say any type of relationship. Also things like staying too long in relationships, feeling guilty, ignoring discomfort. So we're going to talk about that on March 11th. This will be followed by workshops in April and May covering the orgasm gap, discovering sexual self, and more. So let's see here. Yep. And then the next part of the series is for people who identify as men. The 3 workshops are scheduled for June, July, and August. And we'll take time to explore self-identity, power and privilege, values, showing up, and more. And then finally, I'll be offering a 3-hour workshop for folks in relationships at the end of the series, where we will come together with our partners to discuss.